Zone focus is faster than any autofocus. It takes literally 0 time. It's super easy, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Maybe you don't know what it is, or maybe you've got an idea of what it is, but you don't know how to do it. If you want to learn how to do it, this video is for you. The goal here is to break this down as simply and clearly as possible so you can get started with it right after this video. In the simplest possible terms, zone focus is a way to preset your focus so you don't have to think about focus. Let me say that again because it really is as simple as it sounds. It's a way to preset your focus so you don't have to think about focus. If you're looking to create shallow depth of field focus with creamy, blurry backgrounds, commonly seen in portraits, this technique is not really for you. Zone focus takes advantage of a deep depth of field, and that is to say a large portion, if not all of what you see in the frame from the foreground to the background is in focus. Now, this is a technique commonly used in street photography because it allows people to shoot really fast when they see a moment that they want to shoot. Even though I'm not a street photographer, I use this technique all the time when I'm out in bright sun, or even if it's cloudy or overcast, out with friends, out with family, I'm using zone focus all the time. The good news is, assuming you have a camera and a manual focus lens like this one, or this one, you already have everything you need to zone focus. The most important thing you need is printed right on your lens. So let's take a look. Okay, so we've got a lens in front of us. And this particular example is a 35mm lens. Now, you can use this with any focal length of lens. You can use it with a 28, 35, a 50. They're each going to have different characteristics depending on the focal length, but 35 is a nice common example. It's also the focal length that I use most of the time, so it's the example I'm going to show you. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and set our aperture at f11, okay? And the reason I'm using f11 for this example is because that's the aperture that I use most of the time for zone focusing. So we're at f11. Now that we're f11, the only numbers that matter in this example are this number and this number. So in other words, 11 for the aperture, and then on this distance scale, the two numbers that matter to us are this 11 and this 11. Now, everything between these 11s, that is your zone. So if I go ahead and change our focus, if I put infinity right over this 11 on the right, I take a look at the 11 over here on the left. That 11 lines up with about 5.5 feet, or about 1.6 meters. So what that tells me is that everything from 5.5 feet, or 1.6 meters, all the way to infinity will be in focus. And that is it. That is zone focus. It is literally that simple. Okay, now let's go one example deeper. This is another setting that I use pretty commonly, and that is if a subject comes closer to me, I'm going to set it right here. Now again, I'm looking at my zones. I'm still at f11, so the only numbers that matter on the focus scale are the 11 on the left and the 11 on the right. So if I look at my zone now, it's now 3 all the way to about 6 feet, maybe a little over 6 feet. So what this tells me is that everything from 3 feet to about 6 feet, maybe 6.5 feet, will be in focus. So if I want to photograph something that's a little closer than my previous example, where I'm focusing from about 5.5 feet to infinity, then I just bring it to this setting right here. Again, I'm at f11, my aperture is at f11, so on the distance scale, I'm looking at the zones between these two 11s on the left and the right. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can use this with any type of lens, any type of camera. You don't need a rangefinder. You can use an SLR. It can be film or digital. The same principles apply. So I just want to show you this example on an SLR lens. Again, the same principles apply, but I just want you to see visually how this works. So now this is a 50 millimeter lens. So in this example, here's my aperture, here is my focus scale, and there's my focus ring with the focus distances. So, okay, so in this example, I'm gonna go f8, right? So again, just like the other example, since I'm at f8 with my aperture, the only numbers that matter on my focus scale are the 8s on the left and right. So this 8 and this 8. So those are the only numbers that matter. Okay, so since I'm at f8, there's my infinity symbol. If I put this infinity symbol over the 8 on the right, I take a look at the 8 on the left. That lines up with 5 meters. That's about 15 feet. So that tells me that everything from 15 feet all the way to infinity will be in focus. Now, let's say, what if I'm at f16? Right? If I put in the infinity sign over the 16, right? Again, the only numbers that matter are the ones that correspond with my aperture. So the 16 on the left and the 16 on the right. So if I put the infinity symbol over the 16 on the right, I look at the 16 on the left and I see that 8 feet, that orange number is feet. So 8 feet all the way to infinity will be in focus if I'm at f16. Now, this is obviously not a technique you can use for every situation. Just like everything else, it comes with limitations. If you find yourself indoors or the sun's going down or any other situation where the lights are getting dim, then you have to use larger apertures like f8, f4, f2.8, and so on. And the larger the aperture, the less you have in focus. You can compensate by slowing down your shutter speed. But again, that has limitations too. If you're in a situation where your shutter speed is too slow, then you introduce the possibility of motion blur. So like with everything else having to do with exposure, you have those trade-offs and you have to make decisions to balance those out so you can produce the picture that you want to. But if you find yourself outdoors in light ranging from overcast to sunny or any other situation where you have a good amount of light, this is a really helpful technique. It'll help you speed things up and shoot the moment you see an image without having to focus. Now, a couple quick tips about judging distance. In the first example I showed you, the focus zone was from 5.5 feet all the way out to infinity. Now, how do I judge what 5.5 feet looks like? I give myself an easy real-world example. I have friends who are 5'6", so I imagine that friend laying down on the ground. And now I have a visual reference of what a distance of 5.5 feet looks like. Or you can just measure out that distance between you and a wall with measuring tape, and now you've got a visual reference in your mind. Another handy visual reference is a car like a Toyota Prius is about 15 feet. So you can walk around all day with your zone dialed in, and as you see and anticipate moments, you just need to adjust your zone with the flick of a finger. And as you develop your muscle memory, that's going to be instantaneous. You're going to be focused before a shot even happens. Well, I hope that was helpful. My main goal is to help you. So if you have any other questions, please let me know. And if you see a question down there that you know the answer to, please feel free to chime in and answer those questions and help each other out. This railing is about 4 to 5 feet in front of me, and then you gotta be kidding me. There's an exercise studio down there.